So let's have a look at fly stitch now. I'm going to show you two kinds, an open fly stitch, individual stitches, and then a closed fly stitch. So I'm going to show you these on this project here. Here are my open ones and here are my closed ones. So let's start with the open fly stitch. Now this makes really nice individual stitches, or you can put them together and it forms a V shape basically. I've got my V's already drawn on here. So I'm going to come up at the top of one of the V's and then straight back down on the other side of the V. It's not a difficult stitch, this one. And don't pull the thread all the way through. Leave yourself a loop on the top, and to form that V shape I'm just going to come up inside this loop now, and I'm coming up at the bottom of my V, and then if you pull the thread towards yourself you can just see how that stitch is forming. There's my V. Don't pull it too tight because you'll start to distort the fabric. And you can either, for a fly stitch, you can do a long holding stitch on it like that, or I'm just going to do a little shorter one just because I want that V shape, but you can choose how long you do that. Small stitch there. So there's my first one. Let's jump over to this side and do a second one. So up on one side of the V, down on the other. There's my loop, don't pull that through. Come up inside the point of that, make sure that needle is inside that loop, not outside. Inside that loop. Tension it towards yourself, that's important. If I go the other way, I lose the V shape. So it's important to tension it so you get that nice shape there. And then down the other side of the thread to hold it in place. So there's single fly stitches, open fly stitches. Let's have a look at what happens now when we put them together. We can do closed fly stitch. I'm just going to step my thread up to here and we're going to work one of these leaves. So you can see I've already done some here. This is what it looks like when you put them together. Quite a different look, so again a versatile stitch to do. I'm going to fill in this leaf. So I'm going to start at the point and work down to the base of the leaf. I'm just going to put a little pointed end to that first, well, single stitch just to give a nice point to my leaves. So now I'm going to form these V shapes. I'm going to come up on one side of the leaf, that's as if I'd come up here, down on the other. These ones are very small, but the principle is exactly the same. So down on the other, there is my loop, come up inside my loop to make my V. Now I'm actually coming up at the end of that stitch across the point, but you'll see that V form when I pull it. Pulling it down, there's my V shape, and straight down the other side. I'm just going to work these next to each other now. So I'm coming up one side, down on the other, there's my loop, come up at the end of my previous stitch, which will form the point of the V. Tension it by pulling it towards me, down on the other side just to secure the stitch. It's not secure until you put that final stitch in place. Just following the shape of my leaf. Up inside the loop, that's the end of that previous stitch. Pull it towards me, and there's my V, and you can see how that's filling in that shape nicely now. You can do flatter V shapes if you want and have less of an angle and flatter. You can choose how big you make these. So up and down, there's my loop, back up in the middle to make the point of the V. Tension it, don't forget the little stitch to hold it down at the end. You can just keep going till you fill in the space. Nearly at the bottom, so I think one more after this one. Just want to make sure I cover my design lines. Coming up nice and close to that previous stitch, so it gives a nice solid effect. If you've got a bigger shape and you want a more open stitch, you can leave a gap if you like. There we go, final stitch I think. Last stitch just to hold that down, and I can finish that off in there. my 2 little stitches, nice neat finish, and then you can see my 2 versions of my fly stitch. To the top, cut it off, cut my starting knot off as well. So we have individual open fly stitches and a closed fly stitch.